Hello, my name is Tracy Miller, and I will be presenting on my master's project for Jacksonville State University, Increasing Hospital Emergency Preparedness and Response for Frontline Staff Related to Mass Casualty Incidents. Emergency preparedness can often be a topic or agenda item that is forgotten about or cast aside until the latest unnecessary loss of life reminds everyone of its importance. Events such as the tragedy in Las Vegas, Nevada in 2017 or Hurricane Katrina remind the masses that the wickedness of man nor Mother Nature can be prevented. However, we can help mitigate and prepare, building more resilient communities. Any natural or man-made disaster can result in a sudden, unanticipated influx of patients arriving at local hospitals. These events only intensify the necessity for hospitals to be proactive versus reactive with an all-hazards approach. Emergency department staff make triage decisions on a daily basis. However, the stresses in a disaster scenario are amplified. This supports additional preparation and education for the staff to outline and discuss a planned approach, goals, ethical considerations, triage plans, and tools that can be utilized by the physicians and staff. And this is why I chose the population that I did. In the case of the Las Vegas shooting in October of 2017, the data indicated the majority of victims arrived at one emergency department via private vehicle versus EMS at a rate of 8-to-1. This data poses the question on local preparedness and vulnerability. As my regional partners reflected on that Las Vegas incident, a genuine concern loomed regarding preparedness, knowing the numerous annual events that we hold locally that could cause a significant surge and strain on our resources for emergency departments and surgical capacity. There remains a need to ensure frontline staff has the knowledge and strategies to help manage a large-scale mass casualty event. A solid plan was needed for regional hospitals to ensure preparedness for these events. Through research, review of past events, and mass casualty management, this writer gathered best practice recommendations that can be replicated as needed in order to enhance local preparation, building resiliency among staff, and benefiting the community. In response to the events on September 11, 2001, Congress passed legislation in 2006 that required a national health security strategy, implementation plan, and an evaluation of progress to be developed every 4 years. The first report was released in 2010, bringing a multidisciplinary approach to hazard mitigation, assisting with achieving resilient and prepared communities on a national level. Healthy People 2020 has adopted these same goals and objectives, aligning with the NHSS, included as a new section of health indicators for preparedness. The goal, as listed, to strengthen and sustain communities' abilities to prevent, protect against, mitigate the effects of, respond to, and recover from incidents with negative health effects. This writer's population of interest correlates with that goal. The intervention strategies for the 5 sub-roles of the APHN. The clinician can conduct a regional assessment of hospitals, identifying current understanding of the MCI response and the needs of staff. The educator can then utilize the information gathered by the clinician to develop educational tools and enhance staff understanding in regards to a planned approach, goals, ethical considerations, and plans and tools related to an event. The administrator's most valuable intervention is buy-in and support of preparedness initiatives and requiring active participation of its staff and leadership. The consultant can act as a neutral third party to observe or control an exercise or tabletop discussion related to an MCI scenario. They can be a valuable tool to gauge progress and preparation efforts, helping to expose gaps and even celebrate successes. The researcher will review online or published sources, looking for best practice among various disciplines, helping to determine the best approach for MCI preparedness and response. The National Guideline Clearinghouse was searched using terms of nursing, clinical specialty, emergency medicine, emergency preparedness, MCI, with no clinically appropriate guidelines relating to staff emergency readiness. The Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, the AHRQ, was searched with similar terms. I previously mentioned the Healthy People 2020 with their new health indicator for preparedness. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, the CMS, released an emergency preparedness rule, which went into effect of November 2017 that increased hospital preparedness requirements, tying that compliance to reimbursement. Online resources available, such as the ASPR Tracy, Assistant Secretary of Preparedness and Response. It stands for Technical Resources Assistance Center and Information Exchange, which has become an invaluable tool in the hospital preparedness world when searching for best practice since its unveiling 2 years ago. There are many ways to dissect the complexity of the environmental, individual, and agent factors influencing and overlapping preparedness and response to mass casualty incidents. Environmental factors can have a direct or indirect role, contributing to a situation that may result in a mass casualty scenario, such as climate change, severe weather, storm activities, or wildland fires. Any of these events can result in numerous casualties, presenting to a local emergency department and overwhelm current resources. Agent factors can be classified as the healthcare organization. Whether or not the organization financially or academically supports a preparedness program with their employees will have a direct effect on that outcome. Individual factors, personal ownership, and engagement in the learning outcomes. Required learning is only as effective as the participants' direct engagement in the program process. These factors can be single or compound with other factors impacting the outcome or severity of the incident. For example, in the 2011 Indiana State Fair, the straight-line winds ahead of a thunderstorm caused the scaffolding to fail, collapsing into the crowd and causing 7 deaths and reports of 70 to 100 injuries. It was later reported that the scaffolding was not up to state standards, nor were there preparedness plans in place for severe weather. The effect of human negligence, errors, and lack of judgment can have a direct impact on what factors will influence or contribute to a health problem. The summary of evidence articles that were found all had a consistent theme of simulation activities, what tools that were available for the staff to evaluate their disaster preparedness, and also having some form of pre- and post-evaluation tests to assess foundational and follow-up knowledge retention. Assigning prevention efforts with the focus of increasing emergency preparedness and response has a different look than the standard prevention measures, which are based on disease or injury. Utilizing the levels of prevention in this context, I have defined the levels of prevention by association with professional development. Primary prevention would encompass preparedness and response education in nursing schools. Secondary prevention would occur within the context of their employment organization through continuing and agile education. Tertiary prevention could be viewed as following a real event or exercises. The after-action plan is developed, aimed at identifying opportunities for improvement and reinforcing successes. Patricia Benner, with her approach from novice to expert, has outlined the skills and level of knowledge development as the nursing professional develops along the knowledge spectrum. Preparedness education for frontline staff begins similarly to that of a novice nurse, and with additional knowledge, skill acquisition, training, and practice, the frontline clinician will also become better equipped to respond to any mass casualty scenario. Based on the literature review and an in-depth needs assessment of this population, the risk factor that needs to be addressed is at the secondary level of prevention, to reinforce what was learned in school and supplement with site-specific policies and procedures. Preparedness does not exist in a vacuum. It takes collaboration with local partners, stakeholders, and the community. The key leaders in the community, such as healthcare organizations, local public health departments, and a regional healthcare emergency readiness coalition, all have an impact on preparedness. Buy-in of senior leadership within the hospital is vital to program success and implementation efforts. The structure is further impacted by the state and national regulations, funding, requirements from the CMS, and healthcare accreditation bodies. Both local and national events have played a significant role in impacting the necessity and sense of urgency related to preparedness. East Central Wisconsin is home to almost 67,000 residents, along with the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh. The state of Wisconsin has 7 healthcare emergency readiness coalitions formed in 2015 with the goal to help prepare and build resilient communities. The initiative is a collaborative effort in preparedness similar to a population health focus, bringing together all essential stakeholders involved in community preparedness and response. Each summer, the community is host to several large-scale, multiple-day music festivals and a week-long international aviation event, boosting the local economy and significantly augmenting the population throughout the area by over 500,000 people. With tragedies such as we have talked about previously, including the Las Vegas Festival, the Boston Marathon, and many others, our region feels it is not a matter of if something happens, but when. These tragedies have influenced healthcare in perhaps ways previously unanticipated, even before September 11th, with increased national attention on emergency preparedness. For these interviews, I discussed preparedness with the manager of an emergency department and the coordinator of the Regional Healthcare Emergency Readiness Coalition, to gain a macro and micro view of the challenges and opportunities facing preparedness efforts within the local hospital and region. There are many challenges to increasing preparedness efforts within the hospital and region. For the hospital setting, the main challenge is collaborating schedules and offsetting real-time department needs in order to better prioritize time for training. Other issues that came up was their involvement. Leadership felt their involvement was somewhat insignificant until they were consulted or requested to do something to assist in the event of a disaster. The region is challenged with competing healthcare organizational priorities, staff turnover, fiscal commitments, and lack of healthcare experts in the field of emergency management. Better engagement of hospital staff, leadership, and regional partners, preparedness needs to be ingrained into our healthcare culture. Staff and leaders need to see the big picture. As the APHN, this writer needs to help connect the dots for leaders and staff on preparedness and the goals outlined in increasing preparedness. Number 2, the key is to help educate frontline staff. Staff need time to learn, practice, and execute a plan. The challenge is to produce a concise, easy and fun way to prepare and train staff. And number 3, this item runs in tandem with explaining the why. Along with understanding the why, staff and leaders need to be engaged in the process of preparedness, supporting staff and involvement in drills and education, and holding others accountable. The priority diagnosis is a knowledge deficit for frontline staff related to educational training and exercising for mass casualty events. The proposal was to implement an educational plan to increase caregiver preparedness and exercise training response for mass casualty incidents. The goal was to present education and these quick exercises for staff to increase muscle memory and retention for these mass patient surge events. In order to have measurable data to quantify the pre-intervention and post-intervention knowledge of staff, this writer would have an online anonymous survey for staff to complete. The educational intervention would be twofold, with an educational session and a packaged MCI quick drill for staff to participate in that would take less than 15 minutes. A pre- and post-intervention survey asking the role in the event of an MCI incident to assess their knowledge, department, and hospital readiness, followed up with the education for staff, which went through triggering events of what constitutes an MCI, reviewing the first 5 minutes with staff on what their priority actions are based on their role, and then discussing mass triage, and then doing a mass triage exercise with them as well. Followed with MCI quick drills, a 15-minute or less drill, bringing in the charge nurse, triage nurse, ED tech, and physician to give a scenario, then ask about activation and their top priorities based on role. This enabled for real-time discussion and follow-up if someone was not familiar with any of the processes. The resources and team members that were vital in this progress was the emergency department leadership support of the education, the emergency department educator, hospital leadership, and also the Regional Healthcare Emergency Readiness Coalition coordinator. Barriers and challenges. There are several barriers that may occur with research and implementation. Time is always a challenge when trying to lobby for additional education time for staff, whether it be on duty or at a meeting or even an in-service. And also juggling in the real-world census of the emergency department to find time to do these quick drills with staff. Physician buy-in, and also staff completion of a pre- and post survey, making sure that they follow up with that so we get some additional data. The survey results that I would like to share are the ability to identify 3 priority MCI actions. So you can see on the slide there the pre-survey feedback and then the post-survey. So we did see some significant improvement in that. And then also how well is the ED prepared for an MCI surge? And you can also see the pre and post feedback there as well. So we made some great progress on both fronts with the staff. Future recommendations, needing staff champions, having staff on the floor on each of the shifts that can help do some of these quick drills as well would have been beneficial. Also having a physician or a PA or NP champion as well to bring in the physician piece and have a little bit more involvement with them, a longer implementation period, and also remember to incorporate hospital and regional specific procedures as well. And we'll just end with a slide, which was my poster submission in November of this year. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you so much.